Welcome to the Sencast. My name is Dale Pickles. I'm the Managing Director of B Squared and the host of the Sencast. If this is your first Sencast, then welcome. Welcome to the podcast. This podcast is all about improving everyone's knowledge, including my own, and raising awareness of lots of different areas of SEND that sometimes don't get discussed. In this episode, we discussed how an informed parent can change the SEND system and break that cycle. My guest this week was Samantha Ryan, a neurodivergent mother, informal SEND advocate, and author of SEND Help, a parent's guide to SEND life and law. And this is not her day job. She still has one of those. But she fights for support for her son and continues to battle through the SEND support system and shares her experience and knowledge with others. The Sencast is created by us here at B Squared, and our assessment software Connecting Steps has a number of frameworks for different ages and abilities, and rather than me telling you the benefits, here's a quote from one of our schools. Working with B Squared has enabled us to demonstrate, plan and analyse pupil progress across a large setting, taking into account unique starting points, spiky profiles and individual learning needs. We can track and follow our learners from their first day in early years until they move to employment or other post-19 opportunities. Visit the B Square website or click on the meeting links in the show notes to book a meeting with me to take you through our assessment software and our range of frameworks. But now, come on, let's get on with that podcast. In this week's show, we're discussing breaking the cycle, how informed parents can change the SEND system. This week, my guest is Samantha Ryan, a neurodivergent mother, informal SEND advocate, and author of SEND Help and a parent's guide to SEND life and law. This is not her day job. She still has one of those outside of all of this. Samantha fights to support her autistic son, who is also PDA and probable ADHD, and he's been out of school since March 2024. Samantha continues to battle through the SEND support systems and shares her experience and knowledge with others. Welcome to the show, Samantha.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me today. A pleasure to be here.
You are very, very welcome. Now, being a parent is never an easy job. You're always learning just after you really need to know something. And if your child has SEND, then that job becomes infinitely harder. There's no guidebook, no manual, and the information you always need seems to arrive too late, usually after you've already been judged.
Absolutely. And that is certainly been the case for our situation. So, as you mentioned, my son has been out of education for over a year, since March last year. And we have known since he was in nursery about the autism, although he wasn't diagnosed until he was 7. Throughout primary school, he was always on an IEP, he was always under SEND support. But I didn't know enough. I just didn't know enough. I followed what I was being told without really understanding what was happening. So the last year and the knowledge that I have gained, I really think we'd be in a different situation if I knew all that years ago and could have been really part of SEND support for my son and working in collaboration with the school and with SENCO.
So it's always lovely when you have all that information later on. It's lovely when you're going, if I'd known. And that's the thing, we always make the best decisions we have with the information available. So how could that change? Because obviously there's a lot of information you've learned over the last year.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. ADHD hyperfocus has kicked in for a full year of learning. Yes.
But I think it's one of those, again, every situation is different. And I think you've been aware of your son's autism for a while, so you're already in that kind of world. And there is always going to be that kind of that emotional reaction to what's going on. But I often think that emotional reaction often comes from limited information.
Yes.
So, my child's got SEND, that must be me. I must be a bad parent. Why? Because that's what everyone's telling me. All the other parents look at. Mm-hmm. It's that judgment informs how you feel about yourself and that situation. But the more informed we could be, the less that will probably happen.
100%. And I think that's particularly pertinent with navigating through SEND, navigating through SEND support in education. So my day job, I am a global process owner. I work with finance systems and technology. Very, very different from the world of SEND. But I think of things in terms of process and in terms of breaking things down into bite-sized chunks. So when we hit burnout last year, and I really got absorbed in, I ran a Facebook support group for SEND parents for over a year, supporting the lady that set that up. And the more stories I heard of other parents in similar situations, some of them far worse than where we are, the more I realised this massive gap in knowledge that we have as parents. And my process mindset kicked in. And I spent hours and hours, days, weeks, breaking this whole bureaucratic mess of SEM processes into bite-sized guides, so that you've got where are you at in your journey? Right, here's what you need to do now. Without that knowledge, without knowing where you are in your journey, without knowing what stage you're at, trying to navigate through, well, you're wading through treacle. That's what's happening. You're wading through treacle. So that
maybe not
knowledge,
even in the right direction.
Absolutely. No, blindfolded and on fire.
Because I think the thing, when you go into those support groups, there is, again, if you break everyone's journey down, everyone's journey is slightly different.
Yes.
Some manage to get head off in the right direction and get there pretty quickly. Not easy, still walking through treacle. Others are completely meandering in wrong directions.
Yes.
And then it's what are those key milestones? What are those key steps? What do you need to know? It's actually, how do I know I'm on track? Because all those sorts of things, having it as broken down to small steps like B Squared do with our assessment software, helps you recognise, where am I going next? How well am I doing? Am I where I should be? How's this long as this taking? What should I be? Is all those sorts of key indicators and key milestones help you know, am I going in the right direction?
Absolutely. And as different as the journeys are, it is a process. So the Children and Families Act and the SEND Code of Practice lay out all of these laws and regulations. And once you know them, you see the patterns through the journey, and it does almost take you through that journey. And the right back at the beginning of you get put on a SEND register, and then you're into assess, plan, do, review. Parents do not hear that term until it's too late. And that's just the basics of SEND support. We don't know what that is. We've never heard it. And we get given an IEP. We don't really appreciate the importance of that IEP and that document, or our legal right to play a really critical part in that plan. So it is a journey that you can navigate through, and with the right knowledge, maybe you could stop it escalating. And if you can, in the right way, get all that upfront early intervention support, it might not need to progress as far as it does often.
Yep. So let's go to the assess, plan, do, review cycle. Mm-hmm. So I've been in education for years, known about it for years, blah, blah, blah. I think everyone gets confused on what it actually is, but that's a whole different thing. So as a parent, when did you kind of meet it? What was your understanding of it as a parent when you first came across that APDR?
So I didn't come across it until last year. So my son was 9. He'd already hit burnout. He was already out of education. It's the first time I'd ever heard the term assess, plan, do, review. Now, I know now that we've been going through a form of assess, plan, do review since he was in reception because he's had IEPs. But I didn't know that that was the assess, plan, do review. And the assess was limited. The plan didn't have sufficient reasonable adjustments in place. The do was only as good as the plan. And the review was insufficient. So all of those bits could have been much more robust. And we could have ended up in a situation where we may not have needed an EHCP, we may not have needed EOTIS, which is what we have now agreed in the last week with the local authority. And it all costs the local authority far much more. If I'd been more informed up at the front, not only would my son be in a different position, our family, but it would be saving money for the local authority. So I didn't learn about it until we were at crisis point.
And yet, in reality, you've been involved in it for a number of years.
Yes. But parents do not get any education on SEND support. We get parenting courses, left, right and centre, thrown at us, lots of parenting courses, but we don't actually get educated on support in schools. There's no education for us on that. And often you get your diagnosis and a very long report with lots of signposting in it, lots of different things, many of them not really what you need.
So your son had an IEP. How useful was that to you as a parent, seeing the IEP?
I realise now barely useful because I didn't really appreciate the importance of that document. Throughout his time at school, the Senko at his school she's a wonderful, wonderful woman, very, very lovely woman, and was always receptive to me going in with ideas and adjustments. I didn't even know that the term was reasonable adjustments back then. I was just going in and saying, my son struggles with paper and pencil. Can he use a pen? Yes, he can use a pen, but that never got automatically put then into an IEP. It didn't get captured and documented into the IEP. We, at the parents' evening, I would often be given longer sessions than the standard 10 minutes to be able to discuss the plan. But we weren't looking at outcomes. We weren't really looking at how were the adjustments supporting Garrick. It just wasn't quite enough. And again, I will always keep coming back to, if I'd known more, I could have ensured that it was enough and that we were working better together as a partnership.
Did your son have a one-page profile?
No. Again, I'd never heard of that until the last year with all the learning I've done.
Because to me, the IEP is what we're trying to achieve, the outcomes and things like that. The one-page profile, or all about whatever you want to call it this week, that's the bit where you kind of can store those reasonable adjustments. That's when you go in and you go through with teacher A or the Senko, can you do this? They go talk to that teacher. They start doing that. It's great. But if that's not recorded anywhere, that actually here's all the reasonable adjustments we're doing, it's kind of hard to see how much reasonable adjustment there is.
Absolutely. And I think the reality that we are in, so we have the SEND code of practice, how that is applied LA to LA, school to school, is so very different. So whether it is an IEP, a pupil passport, one-page profile, even an EHCP, they all look different depending on what your school is and what your local authority is. So there aren't standards around these documents. And I know, Senkos are coming new into the role and sometimes being asked, can you create an IEP document? With no training, with no guidance, with no standards under which to work. And so it depends on what school you're in, and it depends in what local authority you're in, how standardised these approaches are being applied.
I don't think there is a standard definition of what an IEP is for.
Yeah.
And some people will put in, oh, here's his English target, here's his math target, here's this target. Others will literally look at, which is to me what an IEP is more about, is we have his academic targets. That's like, yeah, we know what we're working on. We know what are the barriers? What actually is it he's struggling with that we want to improve? Is it he struggling to focus on what's going on in the classroom? Is it he's not sitting down? Is it he's doing this? That's what that IEP is. Let's work on those barriers which are stopping the progress. And that makes sense to me.
Yes.
And that's also something you can maybe share with the parents. Go, look, this is where he's struggling. And you'll go, yeah, he does that all the time. And it makes sense, and you work on it. When you have that English target and the maths target, and this is, again, where I think communication between school and parents it's a bit like everyone getting a U1 certificate at sports day, or everyone getting that medal at sports day, because everyone's participated. But somebody came first, and somebody's child was so far behind, it was quite shocking. Now, if we turn that into your children's education, being told that everyone is on track or they're doing well with actually no understanding of where they are compared to their peers, that doesn't help either. You really want to know where your child is, how far behind, not in a, God, your child is so bad way.
Yep.
But actually, you need to know, look, your child's in year 3, but they're actually working at year 1. So that's kind of 2 years. That helps you understand that, oh, okay, that's not right. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, why? That starts a whole load of questions. When your child's in year 3, working at year 1, and they just say, oh, yeah, he's working towards year 3, but we're doing loads of stuff, so it's fine. You're going, cool, nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
Actually knowing where they are and going, okay, that's not right. It starts to me, that's the sort of thing which starts making cogs turn, questions being asked.
But only if, in my opinion, only if that is progress and how they are doing against the 4 areas of need, not just academically. And that is the send between us that we have. The send between us, my son is one of them. He is academically quite gifted. And yet he has communication and interaction needs that have been missed, and he's got sensory needs that have been missed, and that has now left us with SEMH needs that are debilitating because of the focus on academic. In primary school is our opportunity to, what if not just SEND kids were measured over the 4 areas of needs, but that's applied as a whole school approach.
I'm smiling because a number of years ago I created a slide thinking about that same problem. And it's a slide with different size circles on, and cognition and learning was the biggest. And social, emotional, mental health, communication, interaction, and sensory and physical were much smaller, tucked behind. And for most children, that's fine. Yeah, you put the work in cognition and learning. The other stuff comes on over time through osmosis. They just, by experiencing it, they learn. And then with that really big focus on cognition and learning, you're going to judge that child purely on reading, writing, and maths. And for a lot of children, that works okay because that's where all the focus is gone. Great. Now, for your son, as you've just said, cognition and learning takes a back seat. Sensory and physical comes in. SEMH comes in. communication interaction comes in, and you put a lot of time just working on those 3 areas to get him in the classroom, to get him in the school, to get him to sit and learn. All your work goes into those 3 areas. That cognition and learning's taken a bit of a backseat because he's not there yet. But at the end of the year, your son still gets judged on reading, writing, and maths.
Absolutely.
And all the work, all the effort, all the progress in every other area that he's done amazing in, that he's overcome barriers, he's now communicating, his mental health's improved. You've now brought in lots of adjustments to cope with it, to manage his sensory needs. Nope, doesn't matter. What's his progress on reading, writing, and maths?
Absolutely. But then you have the difficulty with many kids who, Garrett never fell behind with cognition and learning. Never. Always been absolutely fine. And it was only when he started at 9 years old to advocate for himself in the classroom. And this is how I would view it. He was refusing to do his work. He was advocating for himself in a way that the only way he knew how to do that, which is, I'm no longer going to put up with this. And by that point, because all those other areas haven't had the support and attention that they needed all along, it was a very gradual but sudden. It was an explosive end, let's say, to primary school. All the signs were there for 6 months, but they weren't supported. And then it led to a complete mental health crisis, breakdown, restraint, and the end of primary school. And it's a common story, really common story. And again, I come back to, I could have done more. I genuinely believe, with the knowledge, I could have done more in collaboration with school.
It's really depressing hearing these stories again and again. But I do see, especially with divergence, a pattern: academically fine, struggling in other areas.
Yeah.
Because they're academically fine, it's not considered a special educational need. And I completely get that. In reality, your son does not have a special educational need because his cognitive learning is perfectly fine. He has support needs. He struggles with SEMH. And this is where, to me, the mental health stuff comes in. Is where's the mental health lead? Mental health lead. It's until he fails. Once he started failing by not going to school, now it became special educational needs. But until that neurodivergent pupil fails, it only then becomes SEND.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things I'm hoping later this year with the new white paper, new other things, actually we're realising there's a lot of children who academically are capable, but in other areas need support, and that support isn't happening. And it's not a case of we use their grades to judge that. Some other way of looking at how do we support this child. I got through education. It was at GCSE points that maybe I did burn out. But yeah, that's when I just started not going to schools, and my parents never found out to this day.
I'm with you there.
Yeah, it's so much easier when your school sent a letter to the parents and guardians of Dale Pickles. My parents see that, I'll be in trouble, so that's going in my pocket. It was so much easier back then.
Yes.
And then my college attendance went just through the floor. And I wasn't interested, but actually these days it was just I didn't see the relevance and so on. Straight through with a couple of A levels, but that's about it. But I was just, what's the point? Now, by that point, I probably had a lot of more options on how I decided to manage that. And I think with your son, no one ever wants to be restrained. No one ever wants to be kicking off. You kind of do it when either you don't understand what options are available, or you're so dysregulated, you go back to maybe the first ones you learnt. But it's it's all about that other support, not just the academic. It's the other things in school. Where is the support around that?
Mm-hmm.
Where is the knowledge? Where is the understanding? And again, going back to things you kind of said earlier about reducing, your son shouldn't need an EHCP.
Yeah.
There are a lot of children who probably shouldn't need an EHCP,
Mm-hmm.
but due to kind of that process, that nice, lovely process you said that there is, that falling down at different parts, or people not collaborating properly, people not working together properly to support that child, that child is then failed. That's what leads to so many EHCPs.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there is a lot of there's a lot of noise in the SEN parent community around what's in the news right now, and the taking out EHCPs, the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill. These things are really, really concerning. I understand some of what's behind removing EHCPs for only those most complex cases. I can understand that, but you can't do that until you solve the problem. Don't be talking about that now. Do the white paper, let's find the solutions, and then let's take away.
So you know about the Children's Families Act, you know about Code of Practice. Do you know anything about the system before the SEND Code of Practice, how it was before then with statements and so on?
And not so much, to be honest. Not so much, other than, not so good.
One of the things that I think could come back is currently we have let's say 3-tier system. No SEN, SEN, EHCP.
Mm-hmm.
That came in 2014. Before that, there was an extra level. No SEN, SEN support, SEN support plus, statement, EHCP. Mm-hmm. There was that extra level between has identified SEN and needs a bit of support and full-on statement.
Yeah.
I wonder how many children with an EHCP, if that's 3 levels of SEN support were there, would actually not in it, but would be that second level.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
I mean, just be very clear to anyone listening. There are always going to be children who really need and should have an EHCP. And with all these conversations that people are speculating, that won't change. The reason EHCPs are going up because the education system doesn't currently meet those pupils' needs. There is the inflexibility. And if we add more flexibility in to meet those children's needs, the number of EHCPs should drop. The reason they're going up is because we're failing them.
Yes.
And anyone whose child has an EHCP, if I said we could go back in time before the EHCP, make some tweaks so your child never needed that EHCP and he would not be on the trajectory they're now on, most people would snap your hands off if you said you can go back, tweak a few things earlier on so this never happened. To me, that is what the government's aiming for. Just don't get quite how they're going to achieve it without money and funding and being more supportive without being forced to. But we'll leave that conversation, that speculation. Let's come back to where we are now in your...
But to say, I mean, I have fought very hard for our EHCP and our agreement for EOTIS. It has taken an incredible toll on me this last year. And parents are not doing this because they love doing paperwork and being put on waiting lists. And we're not, we are fighting hard to get these EHCPs. If we didn't have to, that would be amazing. That would be amazing if we weren't having to get to this. So absolutely, there's got to be something in between. There's got to be somewhere for us to go and get that support.
And I think everyone talks about the SEND crisis. The next year we're in a SEND crisis. A year later we're in a SEND crisis. It's like, Was it a crisis 2 years ago? Was it really compared to right now? And it is, I think, it is slowly getting worse. And I am really looking forward to... Okay, I'm disappointed. I'm going to have another announcement on October of this is our plan and not this is what we're starting to do right now. Again, it's like, oh, come on, let's make differences. Let's make change. And we know the fundamental part in making the change is money. So if the money isn't there, when they announce it in October, we know it's got another year or so before it really kicks in. And it's going to take a number of years. But going back to the topic of this podcast is, if schools really want to support those SEN, their children with SEN, before that EHCP, what you're basically saying is use your parents as partners. Get them as informed as possible. Not, here's enough information for you to read this document. Here's enough information for you to understand why we have this document and what it's for. The current trajectory, and if this doesn't work, what's likely to happen. All those sorts of information to really help the parents of the children with SEND in your school really understand what is going on. Not sugarcoat it, not be rude. Just one of those, yeah, if this doesn't go well, this could affect your son for a number. It's that you're in that zone, aren't you? You're not saying, oh, you've got a sniffle. It's like this is much more serious. This is a life. It's one of the things, as a parent, you want your child to get their quality, get their GCSEs, get their A-levels, go get a job. You're kind of in that zone with your son, EOTAS, educated other than at school, for those who've not come across that phrase before. That could be on a pathway to we don't know where. Could they have GCSEs? Could they have A-levels? If they're not going to have GCSEs, not A-levels, are they going to get a job? What's their life going to... That's the sort of thing you're battling against. But you kind of don't understand that until it's already falling and crumbling around you.
Absolutely. I would love, and the reason I am doing what I'm doing and writing and posting is the more parents we can understand that SEND journey, what it could look like. The more we can understand how you can navigate that. And the more we get on board with, work together with schools, because it's very adversarial out there right now. It is so adversarial. What if schools and parents worked in partnership? What if there were coffee mornings where parents were inputting into whole school SEN approach, SEN provision, giving their advice, sharing their tips, sharing how to deal with autistic meltdowns? Because frankly, parents know best on this stuff. Parents know, but I know in that moment that Garrick was in crisis, I know all he needed was one adult, because he's not a violent boy. It's absolutely, he just needed one adult and a low tone of voice and space, and it changes everything. If parents can help to educate the educators on this stuff, then we create inclusivity in schools, and that saves money. It saves money at the end of the day. Parents can help the escalation that is costing schools and costing local authorities. We can be part of the solution, but it doesn't feel like that at the minute. We're sometimes treated as the enemy. Part of that is because we are emotional. And
how dare you?
The school are faced with us, and we're furious. and we just need to try and really create this new culture between schools, local authorities and parents. And I say in line with what is in the Children and Families Act. It says it in there how this should be working. Let's do that. let's work together, collaborate, and give parents a voice. And actually, we might be able to solve some of this together.
If you're listening, I'm not being rude. It's just one of the things I've found my wife in teaching, and also my own experiences, is when you're tired as a parent, you sometimes take the easy route out. When your child asks for something, you don't want to have it, but if you buy it for them, it just gives you an hour's peace and quiet. You know you shouldn't, but it sometimes does. And I know I've done that as a parent. I think when your child has SEND and you're on the journey and you've got that EHCP, your child, I'm not going to say, I'm probably guaranteed to say that no child with an EHCP is generally fundamentally happy. I mean, I probably said that wrong, but what I mean by that is if they have left their school, they've had a period of not being in school, then they end up in another school away from their friends, or any child on that sort of journey is not really going to be underneath happy. They're going to lash out. There's going to be a lot of dysregulation. And as a parent, you've watched this happen as well. And sometimes you've been fighting for so long that sometimes we don't always make the best decisions. And I think sometimes that happens, and a school can find out that you as a parent did that. Then that seems to be held against you. Not, actually, this child's been at home for 3 years because they've not been in school. They've not been able to because we haven't supported them and we failed them. And actually we gave them trauma through what happened in school. And this parents carried that and supported that child on their own for 3 years. Yeah, no wonder that parent just bought their child another PlayStation controller when they threw theirs against the wall and broke it. Because him playing on that PlayStation gives them a bit of peace and quiet. But it's sometimes I find is that, as you said, you're emotional, you're a parent. Of course you're emotional, you're a parent of your child. You want them to have their life, to enjoy it and be part of the world and be happy, whatever that looks like for them. But at the moment, in the situation you're in, that's being taken away with no real explanation of why. So of course you're emotional. Who wouldn't be?
Absolutely. And I have had many, many difficult parts of my life, nothing like this last year. Nothing like this last year. And I see myself as one of the fortunate ones. And I'll put it down to my ADHD, if I'm honest, because with my own flavour of neurodivergence comes justice, the need for justice, and the need for advocating for everybody and the hyper focus. So I did my Ipsi Law training, run a Facebook group, designed and delivered parent training, and wrote 2 books on top of dealing with my personal family situation and a full-time job. I mean, that's how I dealt with it. I deal with it with action, but we all deal with it very, very differently. It is emotional and it feels like the fight of your life because it's your child's future. And we are all painfully aware of everything we're doing. There is this set path. So as a parent, you're taught there's a behaviourist parenting model, and that's the way that you do parenting. And you're taught there is one path for our children through nursery, school, college, university, into work. There's just one path. And we're all trying to get our kids, navigating through safely on that one path. And then all of a sudden, you've fallen off the path. Your entire future is not clear anymore. You don't know. I don't know if Garrick will sit his GCSEs, but I have radical acceptance on my side. I have radically accepted that we're off the path, and it doesn't matter if he sits GCSEs at 20, not 16.
I was about to say, is when you say sit GCSEs, what you really mean is, will he have his GCSEs at the end of year 11?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what you're told. If you don't, then life is over.
Yes,
As you said,
absolutely.
consider him at 20.
Doesn't matter. It could sit him at 14, probably. Could my son is so amazing if he chose to do, but he prefers Minecraft. So he could sit GCSEs in Minecraft right now. But there is this path, and you are you fall off of it, and you are desperately trying to get back onto that path because there isn't another one, or not an easy one.
There's no defined path. It's
No.
a path along the ridge of a sand dune.
Absolutely.
The moment you're off it, you're never going to get back on it in the current world. And if you're trying to get back on it, you're just fighting against that sand.
Yes.
And you look down and there are people below you on a different path, but you don't know if that's a good path or a bad path, because the only path you've ever known, only ever been told about, is that path along the top.
Mm-hmm.
That top along the ridge that everyone else is balanced on. And from all your experiences, if you're there below you, well, they failed.
Yeah.
That's their fault.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's how you're told to believe. And then as you learn on this journey, I'm going to say the word pushed them off in this analogy, but yeah, actually the reason they're down there might not be their fault. They might have been pushed off, they might have been knocked off, something happened, and that's why they're down there. Now, are they down there because they've realised it's not worth fighting to get back up there, and they're actually quite happy on this path, and actually it's a lot less stressful not fighting, and they're going to walk along this path and find out where it takes them? Don't know.
Yeah.
But the problem is I remember as a parent, my child was born, and I literally within about half an hour, I was picturing myself being a grandparent with their kids. It's what you do as a parent. You plan their whole life in your head.
But Garrett was set to become the first ever president of Earth, and he was going to solve world hunger and bring about peace to the world. I mean, we could still get there. We're just going on a different journey to get there, and that's okay. But it could have been avoided. It could have been easier. It could have been, we would always have had the challenges. But had I known more, had we worked in a better partnership together along the way, it could have been an easier journey for all of us, for the school, for the local authority as well.
But the thing I think we have one path, which is GCSEs, your EBAC, your A levels, your uni. Then you'll be successful and rich, and life will be good. Apart from even that last bit, if you go through all of them, that last bit isn't even true. What are the other paths? And again, you have things like more vocational courses at A levels. But they're not seemed quite as good because they're vocational. They're not A levels. But if that's taking you where you're going, then smile, be happy, smile at those people who feel they have to. It's whatever works for you. But again, stepping back from A levels to GCSEs, that vocational part is frowned upon. You have to get your EBAC, you have to get your X number of GCSEs in this areas and blah, blah, blah. I don't want to. I don't need to. That's not for me. I want to learn skills you're not teaching in school, because that's where I'm going.
Yeah.
Why are those options are? Why do you have to fail your GCSEs before you can sit functional skills?
100%. And that can start in primary, though. That different thinking can start right from primary. We are putting a lot of academic pressure on again, and I wish we'd been focusing more on communication and interaction in primary than fronted adverbials, if I'm honest. I have a thing about fronted adverbials, I'll be honest. Still couldn't tell you what they are, but
I'm literally going, fronted adverbial. Yes. I think it's suddenly is a fronted adverbial.
I'll go with
I'm
your
going to let a teacher shout at the headphones for me getting that wrong. Or go, yes, well done, Dale, top marks. I know past progressive tense. I know that one. I learned that one when my daughter was in year 6. Instead of he ran for the bus, he was running for the bus. That's useful in my life.
Because one time you were on a podcast with a parent and you got to use it.
I got to show off my amazing knowledge that I learned when my daughter was in year 6 because she learnt it at the same time. But there are different paths, and how many people know a teenager or even someone in primary school who decides their life is going to be streaming on YouTube?
Yeah.
We laugh as mature, responsible adults, but I know people of my age who make a living streaming on YouTube, and I do not understand it. I do not understand why other people just donate money to them so they can do what they want with their life. I am slightly jealous that they can, but it's sort of like, but that is actually a career. I know somebody who, not personally, but somebody I follow on YouTube, they spend their day playing computer games full time.
Mm-hmm.
They now go to events around the world because of what they do.
Yeah.
People donate their money to that person so they can do it, so it can bring them enjoyment. So when a child laughs at that, there's probably more people making money doing that on YouTube than we realise. Why? How do they earn it? What are the skills they need? So we don't know what the future holds. It's just, we've got to get away from everyone has to be on this one path. And generally the one path everyone talks about is based on something which happened years ago from that person in government's own previous education, which happened 40 or 50 years ago, that they loved and think everyone should have that experience. Here we are on a podcast. Did podcasts exist when you were at school?
Nope.
No.
Nope, they didn't.
So how do we know if the path that everyone is on is even the right path?
Absolutely.
As somebody who loves the computing world and everything tech, a degree in computing, doing a computer science degree is a complete waste of your life. Companies take more people from people who do boot camps in how to code or other skills than as universities. They take the same percentage of people. Boot camp, quarter of the cost, done in 6 months. University, 3-4 years, huge amounts of debt. Yes, somebody will say, but you learn so many other skills at university. That's true. But is it really going to cost you that much? Also, there's so many professional qualifications in computing that I have that are actually using technology that is relevant and useful. Cisco, Microsoft, various other things, they all do it. Is a degree, if you're going to computing, the right answer? No, absolutely not. There are so many other ways to learn. But we're not told about that. We have to keep that education factory churning.
Absolutely. And in primary school, teaching kids how to learn, children are naturally curious, and children will do well when they can. And that's coming straight from Dr. Ross Green's The Explosive Child book. Children will do well when they can. If you give them the core skills to be able to explore and learn in a safe way, they will explore and learn. You won't be able to stop them. My son right now, ChatGPT is teaching him a great deal. He's done more reading this last year than he ever has, because it's interest-based learning. He's going off and using his time to learn about building computers and coding and Python, and he wouldn't have had that in school. He was head down, miserable. I mean, we've still got a way to go, but there isn't just one path for us. And I'm just such an advocate that primary is where let's focus our attention in primary. Let's get it right. And Bridget Phillipson is talking about early intervention. Absolutely, that's what we need to do. Early intervention if done right, is incredibly important. But let's look at what we're actually teaching them in primary. If they want to be YouTubers, they're going to need a bit of communication and interaction skills. So let's look at that.
The problem is they talk about early intervention. They also then say, well, don't let any grades drop.
No.
And don't do this. Oh, and no money.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not possible. Also, it also assumes the SATs, as again, going back to what you were saying earlier, that SATs are the right way of judging schools.
No. Absolutely not. Parents could probably input nicely into how schools are doing, but no. Academic grades are not everything.
So, just to wrap up, punchline or the end of the summary will be, if you are a school and you have parents of children with SEND, educate them, help them learn, help them realise the path they are on, the path they're likely to end up on, the path they could get back to. Help them actually really understand where they are and how important that document really is. Oh, here's your son's IEP. Cool. Lovely. Actually, why is that there? What's the reason? If this doesn't go well, what's next? That process is, I think, completely misunderstood or not even know exists to parents. It's easy to forget as a teacher who's been doing this for years. It's really obvious what it all means. No, this is a first-time parent, first time in school, first time in year 4. This is going wrong. I don't know what this means. It's brand new information to them. So educate them as much as possible. Help them understand how important this stuff is, the implications, how actually if they can bring things to you that work, please do. Because if you can find those reasonable adjustments and implement that in school, it's going to help. Treat it as a real partnership that actually you don't want it to be one-sided, that you have all the information, they have none. You want everyone to be completely educated about what you're doing it, why you're doing it, and those reasons. It might make it, it will take more time doing all this, helping the parents learn and understand. But if you're doing that and you've got that parents working with you and the IEPs are there and they're putting that support in, they're helping you, if we can stay away from that EHCP by not failing the child,
yes,
it's going to be better for every single person. The most important person it's going to be better for is that child. And I know, as a previous podcast I've done recently, once you get that EHCP label, that can close doors.
yes.
So for that reason, well, it's another reason to not have an EHCP. Generally, it means we failed them. Some children will always need an EHCP, and I'm not talking about that.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the increasing, there are children who have been failed, who shouldn't have been failed, are getting that EHCP. Once you have that, doors are being closed, judgments are being made, and that's not what anyone wants. Anything to add before we go?
And I would say I am a voice. I am using my voice out there. I am a parent. I was associated to a school. So when you say it does take time, there is time investment in doing all of this parent education. I would imagine nearly every school across this country is going to have one parent like me associated to that school. I would gladly go in and help do that education. So schools don't need to be alone, even in doing that education. I've learned so much. Use the parents to do the education too. It's all of it is one collaboration so that together we can help solve the problems that we are facing the same problem on two different sides. So let's just join together to solve the bigger problems.
That's a really good point, because everyone's further on that journey, further behind, got their experiences. what it really means, what's likely to come next. Hearing that from another parent is really powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you for coming on the show today.
My pleasure.
As always, you'll find Samantha's contact details in our show notes. It always makes it sound like your contact details are in every podcast, but as always, my guests' contact details are in the show notes. And you also find links to Samantha's books as well on Amazon. And you'll find those show notes wherever you listen to the podcast or on our website. If you want to get in touch, let us know your thoughts, suggest topics, be a guest or anything else, please message us through social media or send an email to hello@thezencast.com. The Zencast is created by us here at B Squared, and our assessment software connecting steps has a number of frameworks to different ages and abilities. And I don't always blabber on about it myself, but here is a quote from one of our schools. Working with B Squared has enabled us to demonstrate, plan and analyse pupil progress across a large setting, taking into account unique starting points, spiky profiles and individual learning needs. We can track and follow our learners from their first day in early years until they move to employment or other post-19 opportunities. Visit the B Square website or click on the meeting link in the show notes to book a meeting with me to take you through our Connecting Steps software and its a range of assessment frameworks and how it can help you. So thank you for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Zencast. It's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.
Somebody's done it again. Bye, everyone.